he did.
Donated from breakfast.
I got a sticker. You must have $40.
All right. Hello there, friends and RC family. My name is Alec from High Noon Hobbies, and if you're new to this channel, I very much appreciate you checking it out. I hope that you will stick around for a little while, see if this content seems worth your while, and consider subscribing so that I can say to you, if you aren't new here, welcome back to yet another Friday upload. This time we are taking a look at Cameron's second runs from the North vs. South second Northern qualifying round for the North vs. South Crawl and Shootout. These were some pretty tough runs. This second course, as I promised for you, or promised to you in the last video, is quite a bit more tough than the first course that we took a look at. So let's jump right into it. We're not going to do any face cam today because these runs were quite a bit longer than the first set of runs that we looked at, and so in the interest of time, I figured you guys didn't necessarily need to see my ugly face. But I promise you, I am currently wearing a High Noon Hobby hoodie, and if you want to get yourself one or a morale patch or anything else which helps support the channel as well as the High Noon Hobby events, you can check that out in the link in the description. This first gate here is a tough one, and I want to also mention that we are taking a look at truck number 2 right now. So we kind of labeled, or I guess I just very loosely labeled these trucks last time in the previous video. I labeled them truck 1 and truck 2 based on the run order that they went in. This time I am looking at truck 2 first, and then we'll go back to truck 1. Also, I wanted to make a quick clarification or a correction to my video last week. I was talking about the way that we would score out the comps if you were to run 2 different trucks in the same class, which I do believe that is correct for these competitions. However, and that's how I run my competitions as well. However, I don't believe that is what Cameron is doing here. It came to my knowledge after the fact. Well, I already knew and then I had forgotten, and now I know again that these are actually a Class 2 and a Class 3 run separately. So these are 2 different classes of runs. Now they're being run on the same courses, and that is something that will happen in the interest of time to keep people running through efficiently, and also to not take too much time setting up the courses in the morning. And unfortunately, we have a little problem on this. I believe this is gate 4. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. And that one sets Cameron behind fairly early on. That's quite unfortunate. What happened there, you could see that he got a little off balance in his initial descent there, which threw him forward, and then he decided to take a reverse. And as you should do, he tried to take as much of a reverse as possible to get a nice reset. Unfortunately, he committed to the reverse back up the hill just a little bit too much, and he threw his front tires up in the air, and well, then we saw what happened there. He ended up hitting the gate. We ended up taking a little pause there to let some other competitors through this next gate here. This is a real toughie. Let's see. Maybe we were just on, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Maybe that was 3, and then the one we just went through is 4. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because this is 5, the infamous gate 5. This one is really, really tough. It got quite a few competitors. What's happening here is you have to drop off those rocks on the lower section of this, and when you do that, you end up slamming your truck onto this very, very vertical face. The problem that many people faced is that they ended up pinched in between that large rock on the left of the bottom section there and the face itself. And when you do that, you end up just getting torque forces that pull you off of the wall and don't let you get up the ascent. So a good idea on Cameron's part. I think you watched a few people go through this gate beforehand and decided that a winch right out of the get-go was the right call. I would have to agree with him there. Taking 3 points to make sure that was a clean gate seems like a good idea to me. Now for gate 6, there's a few different ways that this can be approached. We saw some people going through it forward and others going through it backwards like Cameron is here. The logic behind going through this particular gate backwards is that this gate lets out in a pretty nasty rock field, which I'm currently standing on to film this angle right here. And by backing down into the gate and then pinching your tire into that little crack, you were able to just kind of pause halfway down that hill and then use the advantage of being facing upright or facing up the hill to be able to get back up there without having to go down into the nasty scraggle down below. Gate 7, this was kind of a deceiving one for a lot of competitors. This particular gate didn't look very difficult. I mean, you can see it's just some fairly small ledges, but the way that they're spaced out was fairly perfect for most competition truck wheelbases, so you end up hitting both ledges at the same time. You could get your front wheels up, and then once you got your front wheels up, I suppose once you got your front wheels over the first ledge, then your front wheels were hitting the second ledge at the exact same time that your rear wheels were hitting the first ledge. And there's many obstacles in the one-to-one world that look just like that, and that is often commonly a difficult problem to solve when you've got two different ledges that are perfectly spaced out for your wheelbase. So unfortunately, getting set up for that one, Cameron just couldn't quite get the angle that he needed to get through there. He went through the gate a bit wide, meaning that he was at too much of an angle, and he ended up tapping that outside gate, as we saw. This gate 8, actually deceivingly easy. This one had a good amount of traction going up it, and the only real difficult part of this gate was this breakover angle here, but there was a sneaky little trick where if you took your left tire and you placed it right on that little ledge that came underneath the cone, you could very easily pull yourself up without needing a winch or anything, which is exactly what Cameron did. So far we just have really unfortunate errors, kind of similar to what we saw in Truck 1. Ooh, and that was a nice upright there. But this is kind of a similar run to what we saw from Truck 1 in the first course video, where there was just a little bit of bad luck at the start of the run, but Cameron ends up pulling it together quite nicely at the end. I think probably realizing that he needs to play really tight to keep his points low. But that's kind of an interesting thing, that it all kind of went astray at the beginning, and then he pulled it together at the end. You can see this bonus gate is a toughie, especially clearing that rear axle once you get through, because the rear axle tends to want to drop right onto that cone on your passenger side. But he did that one nicely, and he shaved off 10 points from his score, which I'm sure he was thinking was necessary at that point, hitting 2 different gates. 3 gates? 3 gates. This gate 10 was also, this got almost every single competitor, and particularly competitors without winches almost never made it through this gate. Now, if you watch what's happening here, there really isn't any clear line to bring your truck through it, and so what Cameron's doing here is lining himself up with the winch, and that really, really lucky pop. I mean, calculated, totally calculated. No, I mean, I think there was definitely some calculation there in terms of him wedging his front driver tire up against that rock and using that as a lever point to push him away from that cone. But realistically, I don't think he could have gotten better than that, even if he had, tried it a bunch more times. That was about the ideal circumstance. So got through gate 10 clean, and now let's take a look at truck number 2. Having a little bit more trouble with this initial climb up to gate 1 here. Just a tiny bit more trouble. Almost as though the truck is just a little bit heavier. And we'll talk about the composition and the setup of both of these trucks just a little bit later. The video that I am releasing on Sunday is going to be a full breakdown of both of Cameron's rigs here, where we can pop the bodies off and really take a look at what is making these such capable competition crawlers. Cameron takes a straight approach just like he did in the previous truck. Unfortunately for him, this truck, as we kind of saw at the entry to Gate 1, doesn't have exactly the same vertical climbing capabilities as the previous truck. So that was about the same line that he took last time. Truck number 2, which was doing the first run this time, truck number 2 got up that climb fairly easily, and then when he tried to take truck number 1 up it in this run here, he was having issues. So he ended up having to take a reverse there, which is unfortunate, but the first point of the course so far. Now we're going to take a winch to get through gate number 2 here clean, and as you can see, on this truck here, Cameron is actually using a dynamic winch line. So he doesn't have a winch servo in there. He is instead opting for an elastic band of sorts and using that to create tension when he pulls the winch out. A lot of people in this area seem to like this style of winch more than the static servo winch, just because of the time that it saves in terms of having to reel the servo out and then spin it back in. I know that some scale competitions, I believe Sorka included, dock different points for the use of this style of winch versus a servo style winch, and that's due to the kind of scaleness of it. So keep that in mind if you are looking at getting into those more scale competitions. Our runs here typically are not quite as scale oriented as some. Cleaned up his run on that gate 3 and making gate 4 look easy. He didn't have to take a reverse or anything. He was composed on the descent into gate 3 and just as composed in this descent here out of gate 4, headed into probably one of the most difficult gates on this course, this gate number 5 here. And now we saw him immediately set up to winch previously. We're going to take a look and see what he decides to do on this particular truck. So you can see he's actually pushing a bit further out to that driver's side than he was last time. And that is kind of to try to avoid that pinch that you get, which you can see is happening to him anyways between the face of the rock and the large wall on the bottom. So it's pinching his body and causing some torsion forces there. He ends up opting to use the dynamic winch line and get himself right up through this gate. Again, a good trade-off in my opinion to use the 3 points instead of taking the risk at getting 10. Headed over to replicate the same line that he took on gate number 6 here. I probably would have taken a little bit more time here, but at the same time he knows that he took a bit more time on gate 1. And he ends up lining himself up here nicely as well. You can see how he tucks that driver's side rear tire into the crack, which allows him, well, basically gives him a bump stop or a point in which he won't go into the crack anymore. And it also gives him a good point of leverage to start going back up that hill. A different approach to gate 7 this time. Cameron's approaching it far from the left, which is a great approach to getting up the 2 ledges. The only problem that he's experiencing now is he's got to pivot around that gate 7 cone. And even though he's running a thin axle on the rear here, we're still seeing issues with clearing that gate 7 with his rear axle once he pivots around. So a new approach here. We're going to take it from the far right. See if we can get up these ledges. Unfortunately, the lower ledge, pushes his rear axle further into the gate 7 area, causing him to be in essentially the same position that he was in before. If things couldn't get worse, or if you thought things couldn't get worse, he takes a winch to try to get up without losing any more ground, and that winch causes him to rotate even further into it, and he basically ended up right back in the same spot. So, with all of that work, the reverses, the winch, we still managed to hit a gate and get 10 points. Quite unfortunate, but here we are with 23 now. Still a better run so far than his previous run. If we can get through this gate 8 here clean and gate 9 clean as he did last time, he'll have a chance for that bonus to shave another 10 off of his score, and we will be in good shape. Hitting gate 8 in a similar fashion, and you can see the belly clearance is really the issue for this gate, but if you just keep letting the truck work... Oh, and we're going to do just a little cone fix there. Probably should have adjusted time for that, but I didn't, so I apologize. You can shave a minute off the time if you want. or a second, not a minute. Don't shave a minute off. All right, no winch necessary. He was able to get through gate 8. Wasn't quite as clean as the previous truck, but it was still fairly clean, and he didn't need to use any assistance. Gate 9 here. This one's not particularly difficult, but you just want to make sure you're lined up for it well. You definitely can get thrown into that lower number 9 cone fairly easily, and that would just be a bummer. Right towards the end, getting another gate before the really difficult gate number 10. We're going to head back to the bonus gate here, and Cameron's going to go for it again, trying to shave those 10 points off so he can bring his score back down below the score for the first run with truck number 2 of this video. A nice lineup, squaring up to that drop, pulling himself away from that cone underneath the rock on the passenger side, and using a bit of throttle to make sure he clears it with the rear axle, and a beautiful, beautiful exit from that gate, allowing himself a -10, pushing him back down to 13. All right, and here we go, entering the disgusting rock field here for gate number 10. Cam looking for that same approach that he got last time, and unfortunately coming in a bit too far to the passenger side, having to take a reverse to save himself from pushing over that number 10 cone, and then deciding that this point here is going to try to find a good winch spot. He ends up back in the same spot again, unfortunately. He can't quite seem to get that tire wedged. He's going to take full advantage of that reverse before he gives any forward momentum. And now we're going to approach it way further to the passenger side. Try to get himself dipped down into that little cubby that he used last time, that little alcove that he used for his front driver's side tire last time. And now we're going to pull out the dynamic winch just to give ourselves a little bit of forward and downward tension. And a beautiful clean line through gate 10 for his second truck as well. Pretty impressive if you ask me. Both of those runs, very, very well done. And really, the best part, look at that consistency. Truck 1 ending with a total of 27. Truck 2 ending with a total of 26. All 4 of the runs. If we look at the course 2 runs there, 8:33 versus a 7:30, and now that was where things got a little bit more out of line for truck number 1 for Cameron. He took it a little bit more time, but course number 1, a 3:36 and a 3:33. Very consistent runs across the board and some great runs there. Now, obviously, these 2 trucks aren't competing against one another in terms of score, but I thought it'd be fun to compare. Now, I hope that you guys will join me for taking a look under the hood, under the bodies of these trucks on Sunday, when Cameron describes what he's got going on, what type of magic he's got going on underneath there. So I really appreciate you guys watching. If you made it to the end of the video here, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more content like this every Friday and Sunday, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Cheers.